Imagine waking up every morning surrounded by everything you once dreamed of and still feeling hollow inside. That was me. On paper, life looked perfect. A career that sparkled under studio lights, smiles captured in glossy magazine spreads, and a schedule full of events, applause, and opportunity. But what no one saw, what I didn't even understand for a long time, was the quiet ache behind my eyes, the constant noise in my head that no standing ovation could drown out. I thought happiness was the byproduct of success. If I just worked hard enough, looked the part, kept everyone proud and entertained, I'd finally feel what happy is supposed to feel like. But here's the truth that hit me like a wave I never saw coming. You can have it all and still feel like something vital is missing. Because having is not the same as feeling. Success doesn't silence your fears. It doesn't soothe the inner critic. What I needed wasn't more accolades. It wasn't more attention, more money, more control. It was permission to stop performing, to step out of the roles I thought I had to play. And that journey, that brutal, beautiful unraveling, it didn't happen all at once. It began with a whisper, this isn't working anymore. And then came the breakdowns, the boundaries, the therapy, the walks in the rain, the mornings spent not rushing, the honest conversations with myself in the mirror. Slowly, painfully, I found something better than having it all. I found peace. I found moments of stillness where I could breathe without pretending. I found that my worth was not measured by applause, likes, or approval. I found me. So if you're sitting here today, nodding quietly, feeling like you've built a beautiful life you can't feel present in, know this, you're not broken. You're just being called back to yourself. And happiness, it's not out there waiting for you to earn it. It's already inside you, underneath the noise, the pressure, the masks. It's in your laughter when no one's watching. It's in your tears when you let them fall. It's in the choice to start again, slower, softer, more honestly. Let go of having it all and fight for what really matters, feeling it all fully, vulnerably, and truly, because that is where the healing begins. And that is where real happiness lives. We often grow up believing that if we work hard, achieve success, and collect the symbols of a good life, will naturally feel happy. This belief becomes the foundation for how we chase goals, make decisions, and measure our worth. The job title, the house, the money, the approval, the reputation, all of it becomes part of a checklist we think leads to inner fulfillment. But the painful reality for many is that even when those boxes are ticked, something still feels off. There's a silence underneath the noise of achievement, a sense of emptiness that can't be explained by logic or external circumstances. And it's one of the most confusing and isolating feelings in the world. From the outside, everything appears ideal. Friends and strangers alike may comment on how lucky or accomplished you are. And yet inside, there's a disconnect. Joy doesn't land the way you expected it to. Gratitude feels forced. Smiles happen, but they're thin. You try to keep up appearances because admitting you're not okay feels like betraying all the effort it took to get where you are. There's guilt for not feeling grateful, shame for not feeling satisfied, and fear that if you say it out loud, people will think you're ungrateful or broken. So you stay silent. You keep pushing forward, hoping the next goal will finally unlock the feeling you've been chasing. This gap between outer success and inner contentment often stems from mistaking validation for fulfillment. Being recognized, admired, and applauded feeds the ego, but not necessarily the soul. Applause is addictive, but it's not nourishing. It can sustain you for a while, but eventually the high wears off. You find yourself needing more attention, more affirmation, more proof that you matter. It becomes an exhausting cycle, a treadmill that never slows down. You run harder, work longer, smile wider, and still happiness remains just out of reach. Because it was never about what you had. It was always about how connected you were to who you really are. That disconnect can manifest as anxiety, burnout, numbness, or a quiet sadness you can't explain. And if you're sensitive, introspective, or naturally inclined towards self-awareness, you'll feel it even more acutely. You might begin to question everything, your path, your choices, your values. It's a scary place to be, especially in a world that tells you success equals happiness. But the truth is, No amount of success can fill the spaces where self-connection and emotional safety are missing until those deeper needs are acknowledged, until you give yourself permission to stop chasing and start listening. Nothing you gain will feel like enough. It doesn't mean the achievements are meaningless. It means they aren't the full picture. They can be beautiful, hard-earned, and even joyful parts of your story. But they cannot substitute the deeper fulfillment that comes from living in alignment with your emotional truth. There is a strange and painful experience that many people silently carry, the feeling of being emotionally disconnected from a life that looks perfect on the outside. Everything seems fine. Friends and family believe you're doing well, perhaps even thriving. You have accomplishments, responsibilities, and structure. You smile in photos, meet your deadlines, say all the right things, and keep moving forward. But inside, something feels distant, unreachable. There's a numbness, a flatness, a quiet ache that you can't explain or justify. It feels like a secret you have to guard because it makes no sense to anyone else, not even to yourself. You start to wonder what's wrong with you. Why does everything feel so dull when it's supposed to be meaningful? Why does laughter feel forced? Why does each day feel like a performance, a loop of pretending while something deeper stays untouched? This kind of internal struggle often goes unnoticed, especially when you've built a life that appears successful. People assume you're happy. They compliment your strength, your achievements, your energy. They see the shell and assume the inside must match. And because it's hard to find the language to explain the dissonance, you stay quiet. You become a master at small talk, at brushing off questions, at saying, I'm fine, when you're anything but. That disconnect becomes heavier over time. It shows up in subtle ways, in the tension in your shoulders, the way you can't sit still, how your smile fades as soon as you're alone. You try to shake it off by staying busy. You plan more, take on more, fill your calendar with things that look impressive but feel hollow. Maybe if you stay distracted, you won't have to confront the emptiness. But it doesn't work. The more you ignore it, the more distant you feel from yourself, from others, from any sense of real joy. Sometimes this emotional disconnect stems from suppressing your true needs. Maybe you've ignored your own boundaries for too long, said yes when you wanted to say no, or lived in roles that don't fit who you really are. Over time, this kind of self-abandonment creates a quiet grief. It's grief for the version of yourself that never got to speak, never got to rest, never got to be fully seen. The life you're living may be full, but if it isn't connected to your inner truth, it starts to feel like a beautiful mask covering something much lonelier underneath. It's possible to be deeply loved and still feel unseen. It's possible to be surrounded by people and still feel utterly alone. This isn't because you're broken. It's because real connection, the kind that heals and nourishes, begins with how honest you're allowed to be with yourself and with the world. And when you've built a life around what's expected instead of what's authentic, disconnection is often the quiet result. It's the soul asking for your attention in the only way it knows how, by withholding peace until you're ready to come home to yourself. There comes a point when the pressure to keep up appearances becomes heavier than the reward it brings. Living a life based on how you think you're supposed to act rather than how you truly feel can be deeply draining. There's a silent performance happening every day at work, in social settings, even at home, where smiles are practiced or emotions are filtered and discomfort is hidden beneath layers of politeness and control. For a while, it might even seem like it's working. People respond well to the version of you they see. They compliment your strength, your enthusiasm, your adaptability. But underneath it all, a different story plays out, one marked by quiet exhaustion and emotional disconnection. The desire to meet expectations, to please others, to be seen as capable and confident often comes from a place of survival. It starts early, learning that being easy to be around, high-achieving, agreeable, or put together earns you approval. That approval becomes addictive, like a currency you rely on to feel safe or worthy. But over time, the gap between who you are and who you present yourself to be grows wider. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. The real you, the messy, sensitive, complicated version gets pushed further into the background. And even if you don't fully realize it, a part of you quietly begins to grieve that loss. Eventually, it becomes too hard to maintain the performance. You feel it in your body, a tight chest, a lump in your throat, fatigue that doesn't go away with rest. You feel it emotionally too, in the form of burnout, mood swings, or a general sense of flatness. You start to ask deeper questions. Who am I when I'm not trying to impress anyone? Or what do I actually need if no one else's opinion mattered? These questions can be uncomfortable, even terrifying, but they're also an invitation to come back to yourself. Letting go of the performance doesn't mean becoming someone entirely new. It means unlearning the idea that you have to earn your place in the world by being palatable or impressive. It means trusting that the unfiltered, honest version of you is enough, even when it's unsure, even when it's emotional, even when it contradicts what people expect. It's about having the courage to feel what you really feel, to say no when you mean it, to rest when you're tired, to ask for what you need without apology. This kind of authenticity isn't always easy. It can shake relationships, disrupt routines, and force you to reconsider the stories you've told yourself. But it also brings freedom to be fully human, not just a highlight reel, freedom to build relationships that are based on mutual truth rather than silent expectations, freedom to live a life that reflects your values, not just your achievements. And with that freedom comes a quieter kind of confidence, one rooted in self-trust rather than performance. The more honest you become, the more at home you begin to feel in your own skin. Life often pushes us into a rhythm of constant doing. The busier we are, the more productive we seem, the more worthy we feel. We chase goals, fill calendars, juggle responsibilities, and move through our days without pause. Slowing down in this context feels almost unnatural, like we're falling behind, like we're wasting time. But sometimes the very thing we need isn't more motion or more ambition. It's space, it's softness. It's the courage to stop and ask what's really going on inside me when life feels overwhelming or disconnected. The answer isn't always to do more. It's often to be more present. Yet presence can't exist in a state of chaos. It's in the still moments, the quiet gaps between tasks, where truth starts to rise. And that truth might not always be pretty. It might bring up sadness, fatigue, confusion, or long ignored needs. That's why we avoid stillness, because what surfaces when we slow down can be comfortable. But that discomfort is where the healing begins. It's the space where awareness grows, where you notice what's been numbed, where you finally hear the small, wise voice that's been buried under noise. When you allow yourself to slow down, you give your nervous system a chance to breathe. You begin to notice that the patterns you've been stuck in, how often you say yes when you want to say no, how frequently you override your limits, how rarely you check in with your emotional landscape. Slowing down doesn't mean giving up or losing drive. It means choosing intention over momentum. It means asking yourself why you're doing something instead of rushing to check it off a list. In that space, you start to recognize what genuinely nourishes you and what merely distracts you. Healing doesn't happen in a hurry. It unfolds in layers, often when you least expect it. You may find it in a walk without your phone, in a quiet morning without plans, in the moment you sit still long enough to feel your breath. These pauses are not laziness. They are necessary acts of self-respect. In a culture that glamorizes overworking and constant stimulation, choosing to rest, reflect, and reset is a radical act of reclaiming your well-being. It allows you to move from reaction to response, from burnout to balance, from pretending to presence. When you slow down, you also begin to realign. You notice when your choices are no longer matching your values. You realize which parts of your life feel out of sync, and you start making micro adjustments that feel more honest. This isn't about making dramatic life changes overnight. It's about creating small spaces where your truth has room to breathe. And in those spaces, your energy begins to shift, not from force, but from connection. You remember that you're not a machine built for output. You're a human being meant to feel, rest, grow, and realign as needed. The permission to slow down becomes the doorway back to your self-awareness, your emotional clarity, and your own quiet power. There is a moment in life when the weight of emotional confusion begins to feel unbearable And the natural instinct is to assume there's something wrong deep within. When you have so much to be thankful for, when others see you as strong and successful, yet you feel overwhelmed, lost, or disconnected, the mind begins to spiral with questions. Why am I not content? Why does this feel heavy when it should feel joyful? Why can't I just be happy? These questions don't arise from weakness or failure. They surface because you've hit a point where your emotional needs are asking to be heard, not ignored, not explained away, but truly seen. The world often teaches us to suppress those feelings, be grateful, stay positive, keep going. But beneath the surface of gratitude and forward motion, or there's a more vulnerable experience unfolding. It's the realization that you've been living by someone else's rules, or that you've stretched yourself too thin trying to be everything for everyone. And when that realization hits, it can feel like your entire foundation is cracking. But that crack is not a sign of damage. It's a sign of truth for trying to break through. It's your soul, your body, your emotions, all signaling that the pace, the pressure, the persona no longer fits. This moment doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're failing. In fact, it means the opposite. It means become sensitive enough, self-aware enough, and honest enough to notice that something essential has been missing. That missing piece is not more success, more validation, or more control. It's connection. Real deep internal connection with your own voice, your needs, your limits, your truth. And the fact that you can feel the absence of it is a powerful sign that you're waking up to yourself. Many people walk through life numb to this. They become so used to the noise of expectations that they forget they're even allowed to feel anything else. But the moment you begin to notice the disconnection, the moment the ache becomes impossible to ignore, you're already beginning the process of coming home. That quiet discomfort, that emotional itch you can't scratch is not a flaw. It's your inner world whispering there is more to life than this. There is more to you than this. And that whisper, if listened to, becomes a turning point. You begin to move away from shame and towards self-compassion. You stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what am I truly needing right now? You notice that the expectations you've been carrying may no longer serve you. You start to realize that your sensitivity is not a weakness, but a compass. It points you toward honesty, rest, change, and care. And slowly, without rushing, you begin to rebuild, this time not from a place of performance, but from a place of truth. You begin to understand that your feelings are not flaws to fix, but messages to explore, invitations to realign, and evidence that you are human, not broken. Happiness has often been packaged as something you earn after ticking enough boxes. When the career is solid, the home is in order, the relationships are thriving, and your days are filled with productivity. It's treated like a final destination, a place you reach once you've done everything right and collected enough validation to justify feeling content. But that version of happiness is fragile. It depends on circumstances staying in your favor, on others approving of your choices, on external things aligning perfectly. And the moment any of those pieces shift, the feeling slips away, or what's left is a familiar emptiness that no amount of external success seems to fill. True happiness doesn't come from performance or perfection. It lives in something far quieter, far more internal. It begins with connection to your breath, to your values, to your emotions, and to your truth. It's found in moments of presence that don't need an audience. Or it's in laughing at something ridiculous when no one's around, in pausing to enjoy your tea without rushing, in crying when something touches you deeply without shaming yourself for it. These are the moments that root you in something real, something that can't be bought, applauded, or measured. They don't require permission. They just require your willingness to be present. That kind of happiness is steady, but it's also vulnerable. It asks you to slow down and feel. It asks you to notice your own needs before everyone else's. It asks you to stop outsourcing your joy the next big win or the next round of applause. It's quieter than what we're used to chasing. So it can be missed if you're always moving. But once you experience it, once you feel happiness that come within, you begin to realize how much noise you've been carrying that never really belonged to you. This internal kind of doesn't mean life stops being hard. It doesn't mean you stop caring about goals or relationships or growth. It means that your happiness is no longer a hostage to those things. It's not conditional. It's not performative. It's something you need to earn. It simply exists when you're aligned with yourself, when your choices match your values, when your words feel honest, when your boundaries are respected, and when you treat yourself with the same compassion you offer others. There's a sense of freedom that comes with understanding happiness in this way. You no longer feel like you're on a treadmill, constantly running towards something that never seems to get closer. Instead, you begin to recognize that joy is a practice, not a prize. It's something you return to daily by choosing presence, honesty, and self-respect over pressure, expectation, and image. Even in moments of sadness or difficulty, you can hold a thread of inner peace because your happiness is no longer about what's happening to you. It's about how deeply you're living from the inside out. So if you've been chasing, striving, performing, and still feel like something's missing, breathe. Listen, the happiness you're looking for isn't waiting out there in the next achievement or the next version of yourself. It's already within you, quietly asking to be felt, not earned. Come home to that truth, and you'll find that everything you were seeking has been inside you all along.